All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. We are going to be talking about why y'all should read The Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee. And I'm joined by my lovely friends and Discord mods. So join my Discord to hang out with these lovely people. But Clara, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm first. Yeah, I'm Clara. I have no credentials to be here other than that I like books.
No, that is not true.
That's
Clara is a fantastic artist, and you should go follow her on Twitter. And she has amazing thoughts about books, and she's awesome.
yeah.
But
These are
Clara,
good books. That's why I am here. That's me. I like these
thank
books.
you. Alex, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Alex. I also like books and I read them sometimes. I like to own them more than I like to read them, though. So I have a lot
Valid.
of books, right, that I'm just never probably going to read. I don't know. Like the other month, I bought like a whole fantasy series from the 80s. When am I ever going to read that? I don't know. Hopefully never.
Honestly, hashtag relatable. So thank you for being here, Alex. Chase, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Chase. My only credentials are also that I like books that I don't read very often. One of which was this giant tome that I bought last year at this exact same time. And Rid and I were like, we're going to buddy read this. And
we never did.
Never read it.
Yeah.
So,
a year ago, we were both like, let's both read it. And then it's been a year and we still haven't read it.
We shook hands and we're like, we will not do that. So
yeah. But we did read Jade City and Jade War recently, and all of us loved it. So thank you for joining me today. And yeah, for the people who haven't heard of the series or maybe you're not familiar with it, to me, this series is like first and foremost a family drama. It's about the different dynamics between these people, and they're called Greenbones. So they have these special abilities granted to them by Jade. And in this world, Jade gives the person who wears it is basically like a superhero. They have heightened senses and they get stronger, and they have to train to use this Jade. But the family that this series follows is called the Culls, and they are very powerful in this country called Kakon. And yeah, do you guys have anything to add to that? I'm doing a terrible job of summarizing this, but to me, this is first and foremost a family drama.
Yeah, I would say it's a family drama about, different members of the family attempting to deal with society and change, or the absence of change.
Mm-hmm. That's a huge theme, definitely.
A huge aspect to this too is because it's a contemporary fantasy series, relatively modern. It's not completely modern, kind of modern. There's kind of this whole aspect of business and capitalism in this story, and a huge part of the story is the commodification of this world's magic system, and buying and selling and controlling the distribution of it. And that aspect is super interesting, and not something I see a lot of fantasy series go into. So if that sounds interesting to you, that's totally a really huge aspect of the series.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That I don't think I've read any other series where the magic is actually a physical, national and natural resource that has to be controlled and actually physically guarded and things like that. So that's definitely very cool. And I think also the series has a lot of DNA shared with things like Wheel of Time, things even Broken Earth. Is that right? Yeah, where their types of magic systems are actually very complex. But they're also kind of soft and just just the magic is just very similar and has a lot of DNA. So if you like those series and their magic systems, I think this is also kind of in that same vein. But the story wise is totally different. It's definitely a insular family drama.
Yeah, I want to speak to the setting of this of the series. I love Kakon just as a location. It's Asian inspired fantasy, so it's kind of this amalgamation of Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Taiwan. And so it's I love the setting of this series, and I think Fonda Lee does such a great job of making KCON feel like its own character. And I mean, we haven't talked about the main conflict in the series, which is kind of like there is the family drama, but it's also like the families versus the families. So there's kind of the main cast of characters who is the Calls, but they're kind of beefing with this other family of Greenbones called the how am I forgetting this?
The mountain.
Yeah, the mountain clan.
Mountain clan.
Mountain clan. They
Yeah.
were the one mountain society. That's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone in the
yeah.
comments is saying you could take the magic out of it and still have a good book.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that's I feel like
absolutely.
it's like this idea that I saw like floating around the internet a couple times. I don't know when, but it was like if you're in a world where like magic is like a real tangible thing, then like at that point is it more like science or like business? And I feel like that's the vibe here.
Yeah.
And like yeah, Chase.
I was just gonna say, I was remembering a conversation between when Rid was reading it, and we were talking about the names of the clans, and one is the Mountain Clan, and then one is the No Peak Clan. And it's like one of the most petty and like funny things. It's like, what did you say? It's like you're the Home Depot, we're the No Home Depot, or something.
Yeah. I think Fonda Lee has a really like funny and like wry sense of humor, and I think that definitely shines through in a lot of the in the series. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary of what the series is about. Is there anything we missed? Like we talked about the magic system, the setting, the characters. Let's talk about the characters. Who are some of your guys' like favorite characters in this series?
My favorite character, probably, it's a tie between two characters, Hilo and Andon. But Hilo is one of the characters that's a central focus of the story. And he's super interesting to me because Hilo for those of you who don't know, he's this figure who's very high up in the No Peak clan. He's a member of the Cull family. And he is kind of like the muscle of the clan. He's very strong, powerful. And he doesn't tend to have to think things through before he does them too much. He just kind of like lives by his fist. And he's a very likable character. He's very hot-headed, but he's very loving of his family, and he's like very supportive of his family members and stuff. And so it's really easy at first to get hooked onto this character because he's very like straightforward, like likable, hot-headed, cocky, fun attitude, likes cracking wise. But as the series goes, Fonda Lee likes to like lull you into like, oh man, I love Hilo so much, and then you just kind of like overlook the fact that he's a murderous criminal, and then every once in a while you'll see these undertones to Hilo's personality that make you reevaluate everything about his character. Like he'll do something and you'll be like, oh yeah, he's not a good person, even though he treats everybody around him nicely. What about the people who are not part of his family? And then you see like maybe he has some obsessions with family and like his ideal version of reality, and like having his own like personal like denial as like defense mechanisms. Like there's another character, Shay, in the series who prior to the series starting, she leaves the family to go pursue a life of her own. And that kind of goes against Hilo's like vision of like what he wants reality to be, what he wants his future to be, and so he just rejects her entirely. It's like this complete rejection as like a defense mechanism of things not being the way he wants them to, and it's like he has this obsession that drives him, and I think that like makes him transcend a lot of similar characters in other works that are like very cocky and confident, of having this like darker, more twisted aspect to that character archetype.
Yeah, for sure. Hilo is definitely, I think, the anchor to the series. I think he's kind of like, I think he's kind of like the main character. If I had to say the series had a main character, I would say it's Hilo. But it is very much in an ensemble because it is a family drama. And yeah, Clara, who's your favorite character?
Yeah, I would say my favorite character is Wen, for much the same reason that she's an opposite to Hilo. So if Hilo represents like the established family, he can use this magic, then Wen is the opposite of that. And she's kind of like like I don't want to say like regular person, but kind of she's like the regular person among this family of magically gifted, powerful people. And the way that, no spoilers, but the way that she makes herself valuable and relevant to the plot, despite that, is really a good commentary on. I mean, these books are about society and people's place in that, and hers is really a good example of dealing with privilege and how to make that work for yourself and for people around you.
Yeah, I love Wen. Wen is such an, I think Fonda Lee, like I remember reading a comment about her talking about Wen and kind of her wanting to like subvert the typical like mafia wife character. I think we're used to like seeing like the wife as kind of, you know, sometimes you have like the nagging one who's kind of like mad at her husband for like always being, you know, doing mafia things, and then like other times you have the one who's like more supportive, but like at the end of the day she's still just like a side character. And I think that Fonda Lee does a fantastic job of making Wen her own character that's like no spoilers, but Wen is like romantically involved with Hilo, so that's like from the get-go of the beginning of the series, but like her character still stands on its own, separate from Hilo, even though she is like his romantic interest. And I love Wen. And
I think
oh no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think a big part of something that Fonda Lee does is conveying that like everyone is important, whether it's like the main characters and then the people who don't have magic, and then also all the way down to the members of the clan. Like it's all about clan loyalty and how, you know, everyone contributes.
Yeah,
and that's like a huge aspect of the series, is like this clan like mentality to the entire cast of characters, and how there's like this toxic attitude that is instilled in everyone of like contributing to the clan. Like violence is often the answer. Like we have to replace blood with blood, and like, and there's characters that do try to subvert that. I'm sure we'll get into that in a second, but that's like a huge thing that affects every character's arc in this series. Like addressing this like toxic society and these norms that are pressed onto people. Like Wen is very good example of that.
Yeah.
Chase, who's your favorite character?
I think and Autumn in the chat just said Fonda Lee is great at taking typical archetypes and twisting them into deep and interesting characters, and I think that that's 100% true. And just generally speaking, before I tell you my favorite, is just that I think she's so good at also not only writing these characters and giving them so many dimensions and layers, flaws, but also like things that you love about them, like a Hilo, where you just like can't get enough of him, but you're still like, logically you should not like him. I think he's probably one of the best of that archetype I've ever seen. But she's so good at also making them so consistent throughout the narrative. Like, I don't ever feel like a character does something where I'm like, that's not who they are. Like, she's very good at keeping their voice and like who they are very strong. But my favorite is really. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go.
No, I was just gonna say I think she's really good at surprising the reader but not shocking them. And like every time there's a plot twist or like a character does something that surprises me, it never feels like cheap. Like it never feels like, oh, she just put this in to like for shock value. It always feels like very earned. But yeah, what were you gonna say?
No, yeah, you're 100% right. Like she surprises you because she's a master of controlling your like what you're paying attention to, but the actual character motivations never like out of left field or anything. Yeah, my favorite is Shay, just because I think that she's obviously just interesting on her own. Like Alex said, she leaves the clan and denies like being a part of that Greenbone structure of life and that way of living, and she goes and like basically has like a foreign or a trip abroad for like 2 years, I think, to go to college, and she comes back. And when she comes back, she's still like pushing it away. No spoilers, but I think that just the way that she's kind of the connective tissue, I think, of the books, where, all the characters interact, but I think she emotionally is the person who really like goes back and forth with each of the characters in a way that's like very subtle, like her relationship with Lon, her relationship with Hilo, and they're all very special, and Win as well. Like she's just
Yeah.
the person that I think is my eyes as a reader and how I think I'm feeling. So that's who I connect with the most. And then, just generally speaking, Shay is one of the most badass characters in all of fantasy.
Definitely.
Like, to me, she has the best scene in the 2 books combined. She's got the best scene. We'll talk about that.
I think we picked our the same favorite scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shay is like,
we're all just going to talk about the same thing.
I reread it today, and it's as good as I remember. So yeah, she's awesome.
Oh yeah. Mark had a question. He said that himbos are almost always my favorite characters in books. Is there a himbo of any gender in this series for me to get attached to?
Yes.
Multiple.
There are several himbos. Hilo is one of them that we mentioned earlier. I wouldn't say Lon is. Lon feels a little too smart for that.
Smart.
Yeah.
Too capable.
But Hilo has these 2 buddies. They're called the Make Twins. And they are himbos as well. And so you got this trio of himbos that is just kind of like working together to like run the clan.
That's everyone in charge.
The holy himbo trinity.
Yeah. Especially, you get more of them too in the second book. And like, it's awesome.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's catch up on chat. Oh, hello, KD Books. Hi, Jake. Hi, Gigi.
Hey, Gigi.
Bimbos. Not smart, bad people. Yeah, there's a lot of hot, smart, bad people.
That's actually every character in this book.
The main villain is a bimbo.
Yeah. So I don't usually like to use tropes to like describe series, but I feel like it's an easy sort of reference point. So I just wanted to see, are there any tropes that this series uses that you guys really enjoy, or maybe they subvert this trope? Any tropes that you want people to know about? No.
I do have one.
I do too. I just talked to us, so y'all go.
Okay. The reluctant hero is like an archetype that this series does threefold. Who I would describe as the 3 main characters of Greenbone Saga are Andon, who's this, we haven't really talked about him too much, but he's the younger cousin that's part of this family. And he kind of is struggling with all the toxic masculinity in his life and like the toxicity of the environment. You have Shay and you have Hilo. All 3 of them play into this reluctant hero archetype in different interesting ways. Like Shay, she doesn't want to be a part of the clan, and she tries very, very hard to stay out of like the clan business and all the events that are happening. But obviously, this story is about the clan, so she does get involved. Hilo, he kind of has to step up into leadership positions that he's not necessarily comfortable with. And he really struggles with that, and he feels like he shouldn't be the one doing this. And then Andon he has this super interesting aspect to his character. He has this like the magic system has this illness associated with it. What's it called? Like the itches. And eventually you'll get like so addicted to Jade that you'll like go crazy and end up killing yourself. And he's extremely powerful because of his he's like mixed blood. He's part Kekanese, part Espenian, which is kind of like an analog for like Britain, I think. They use British accents in the audiobook. And that affects how he interacts with it. And so he can get more addicted to it than other people in the family can. And his mom actually died that way. And so he's very scared of becoming a Greenbone. He doesn't want to become a Greenbone because he's like, I don't know, is this going to affect how I like live my life? Am I going to become an entirely different person, you know? And so like just this 3-way like reluctant hero archetype like really goes well with like all of the conflicts between these characters and their family drama, because they're all reluctant in different ways that ultimately end up clashing with each other's ideals.
Yeah, that's a great breakdown of it. Clara, did you have any tropes? That you
I have a trope that's kind of the opposite of what Alex was saying. So I was thinking about Alex is saying reluctant hero, and I think another trope that I really like is when you have like a sidekick or someone who really wants to help, but doesn't have superpowers or something, and so I think when, like I said earlier, when is this character who is, you know, not magically gifted among this very powerful family, and as she tries to make her place in this story, I think that's done very well.
Yeah.
Um,
Chase, did you have one?
Just generally speaking, I think, you know, we all know that it's like a mafia style setting, and just it uses a lot of those tropes from like Godfather movies and things that I know that Fonda Lee is a big fan of. But just more generally speaking, the whole family drama thing, I mean, it's present in a lot of shows that are big right now, like Succession or Game of Thrones or something. But like, I think what makes this different is that a lot of those people are, the drama comes from them being like really selfish. And I think with this, it's like a lot of the drama comes from this tug of war between selflessness for the clan versus being more selfish in a good way to like think about what's best for you. And a lot of that comes with like Kay and Andon and like having to push back against this selflessness, but it's actually like more like control of keeping them doing what's best for the clan instead of themselves. And I think that for a lot of people, like I don't have this experience, but I know for a lot of people who have family dynamics like that, where it's like do what's good for the family and like put yourself second. I think that's probably a really interesting thing to see on page of like this tug of war between that kind of mindset.
And going off you, Chase, like I'm just looking at the cover of Jade War here, and there's this tagline at the top: "Family is duty, magic is power, honor is everything." Yeah. And like that's exactly the mentality that, like for Andon, these are things that he challenges every single one of these. Right. You know, so you have this like this story presents you with like, oh, these are the rules of the world, isn't it cool? And then as it goes on, like everybody's challenging it. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I found myself like in the first book, I was like super into it where I was like, oh yeah, wouldn't it be cool to be like part of this clan and like have this system where you're like protected and it's not like it's completely without benefits. That's why it's like survived this long, is because the people within the clan enjoy a lot of benefits because of the protection that they get from the Greenbones, both like physical protection, like because the Greenbones will like patrol the streets and like protect them from criminals, and then like monetary protection because they will get like business deals and contracts if they're, you know, good to the family, good to the clan. And it's like, and then like I think in Jade War, Fonda Lee kind of like breaks that down and makes you realize like, sure, it's good if you're part of the clan, but if you like step out of line even a little bit, there's like the consequences are just as dire as the benefits. So yeah, that's
I don't know if it's spoilers to say what's on the front of the second book. But if the first book was family is duty, magic is power, honor is everything, then like what's on the cover of the second book is very, you know.
I don't think it's spoilers. You can
not spoilers. Okay, it says magic divides, power corrupts, family endures, and that's good. Very, very interesting in light of that.
Do we know what the Jade Legacy tagline is?
Oh,
I don't know.
I mean, we could probably find it.
Maybe we can look at it. Let's Google it. Oh, it doesn't have one.
Oh.
At least
not telling us what the Jade Legacy is, I see.
It just has a blurb.
Maybe they're hiding.
I loved this book, Patrick Rothman.
Yeah, I love this book.
Yeah. Okay, I was gonna ask, like, is there anything about Greenbone that you think makes it unique from other series? Maybe people are like sick of reading this normal fantasy, and there's something special about this series that struck you.
Yeah. Actually, go ahead, Claire.
Oh, okay. I was going to say the fact that, like we've said, that it's contemporary fantasy. I know we have like a lot of Discord people who primarily read like epic fantasy, and I think that's just, you know, what the market is saturated with. But the fact that it's got this backdrop of like politics and business, I think makes it super accessible, because that is something really relatable. It's really like if there was this power that existed in our world. And so it doesn't take very much, I don't think, you know, to see yourself in this world. And we could talk more about that later. But, you know, a lot of the problems that this society faces are certainly real life issues.
Yeah, I think with Andon especially, Andon, like a lot of his character revolves around like identity.
Yeah.
Um, like Alex mentioned that Andon is like half Hispanian, half Kekanese, and that comes into play with his character a lot. And there's just like a lot of themes of like, you know, if you don't fit into a certain mold, like how does society react to you? And yeah, I think that's like really relatable. But yeah, Chase, did you have one?
Yeah, and I think mine actually kind of goes hand in hand with Clara's, like the contemporary setting. I know for me, like I oftentimes avoid any media that's like too similar to real life because I do kind of want to have that like escapism. But I
Yeah.
think what
Yeah.
makes this so good and why I attached to it so quickly was like the setting contemporary, which does make it accessible, it does make it very relatable. But the writing style is so like cinematic, vibrant, just like really like leaps off the page. I mean, you were talking about earlier, it's like he or kick on as like a character of the series, and that line, it's like in the first paragraph where she's like, it was hot and sticky and hot like a spent lover, and things like that. Like just her way of describing things. And then I think too, the other thing is a lot happens in Greenbone. Like small things are just like a lot of small events are occurring, and it's really hard actually, like even a year later, to really remember like what happened other than the major plot beats. So I think what's really cool is being able to revisit it and you actually get new things out of it. So I read the first chapter again today, and there was a whole thing I just missed my first time that just made me die laughing. And I was telling Rid before we went live what it was, and it's just like a scene, like if they do this in the show, the way Fonda Lee does this like smash cut of like perspective and how it is, it's hilarious. And like I've missed it the first time because you can just read this thing like page turner, and then you can go back and you'll find so many more nuggets and things to appreciate second and third time around. So it's got really good rereadability.
Paul is saying he loves that it's not just contemporary restricted to one city continent, but also deals with the whole globe. And that's definitely like something to talk about in spoiler section as well. But the way that it deals with scope is really interesting because clearly this is like, you know, if the whole world exists, then, you know, you have questions about how this magic affects the whole world. But she starts the series and the conflict in the series off so small that you are like totally shocked and taken aback when it starts to address the whole world. And you're like, oh, wait, this is something that is going to be addressed. And, you know, you have no idea how that's going to be resolved. And that's kind of existentially terrifying.
Yeah, and not just scope of like the world, but scope of time, because she's like jumping 2 or 3 years ahead. And I don't know if it's spoilers, but like this is going to be a long time frame for the whole trilogy, right? And so like, I don't think we've ever seen anything that goes like this broad, and then also like time-wise so deep. So
I think that helps the pacing a lot too, because there's never like a moment where you're like, there's never a lull in the plot. It always feels like there's this like very forward momentum going on, because like Fonda Lee's she's not afraid to just like skip over time.
And it takes such like writing talent to be able to say like 3 years passed and in the middle of a paragraph and not have it be clunky. It's totally not out of place at all.
Yeah. And like
that reminds you of those
Andon, like it's talking about like the global aspect of the series. Like Andon is a character who gets very much involved with that as the series goes on, and like seeing different cultures interact, because at the beginning it's mainly just the Kekanese culture, right? But as the series goes on, you start getting more different cultures intermixing and reacting, and then seeing how like different like people in different places view Jade and view like the clans and like this way of life, and how other ways of life exist and are out there, and the characters could, you know, make a different life for themselves. I love how that comes into play with their personal arcs. Like there's this global scale to the conflict, but it's also there's like this global scale to like personal character like motivations and like changes and development over time. It's super interesting the way it's done. One of my favorite arcs is an arc that has to do with another country in particular, in Jade War. That's probably my favorite arc in the series. But we'll talk about that in spoilers.
Yeah, I mean, we briefly mentioned that there is going to be a TV show. So
Mhm.
if you guys are interested in that, you should get in on the series before the TV show happens. And yeah, you can be
Yeah.
here before the hype. Um, do you guys have like a fan cast for the TV show?
Oh God.
Oh boy, honestly,
Can
no.
we get Daniel Henney to play both Lons?
Yeah, I want that to
That-
happen too. I feel like he'd be good at it.
Oh yeah, Daniel Henney. I could see Lon as Daniel Henney.
not
Very
to
easily.
not to bring up Wheel of Time too many times, but Kay Alexander would be a good Shay.
Oh yeah.
I think
Who would be Nynaeve could play?
we're just gonna shove them all in.
We're just shoving them all in.
Yeah.
How many Wheel of
It'd be
Time
the same.
references can we make?
Oh boy.
Actually, in Squid Game, there's the girl from the first episode who, when they first, I don't know if y'all seen Squid Game, but like, it's not spoilers, but like basically there's a girl who's like this pickpocket, and she pickpockets the dad, and I think she would be a really good win.
Ooh.
If nobody has seen Squid Game, then this is irrelevant. But
Yeah, we
it has
haven't
big
seen
win
Squid Game.
energy. Any squid heads in the chat, just let me know.
Yeah.
Squid heads. I know. Everyone wants Daniel Henney as Lan.
David in chat is saying, I totally imagined this story to be confined to one large city, and it's cool to hear that the scope is much larger than that. So the thing is that, like, I mean, this is contemporary in the sense that, like, I would say it is mostly confined to one large city, but like, imagine that the one large city was like modern day Shanghai or like modern day New York. Like,
Yeah.
you know, that doesn't limit it to a small scope, and that's something that you don't see very often. I mean, it's not spoilers to say that there's phones and there's airplanes, right? Like
that took me by surprise. I thought this was going to be like a medieval fantasy.
Oh
that's
really?
a really yeah, it being contemporary makes it so that I feel like it gives Fonda Lee like so many more options.
Yeah, well, it's
right?
like
You can be in another continent, you know, the
And-
next day.
and in Wheel
Yeah,
of
characters.
Time, like in
Yeah.
cities in Wheel of Time, they're like, it'll be like, oh, this city's massive, and then you go to this like castle, you go to the castle, and then that's it.
Yeah.
And it's like you didn't really visit the city. Whereas here, like you have the armpit and like all these different actual like parts of the city that you may not know totally. Like may not go there, but you know like what that city part is like, or you go visit like a little restaurant. So I
It's
think
kind
you
of that
see
world building thing where like she only shows you like the tip of the iceberg, but you get the feeling that there's like this whole sprawling city to explore. And I think the thing that Fonda Lee does really well is like, you know how as like Americans, well, Alex is not fully American, but like as Americans, like, or just North Americans in general, like we tend to be really like insular and be like, oh, this is the center of the world. And like that's kind of how I feel with KCON, where like the characters feel like KCON is the center of the world and like nothing else matters outside of KCON. Or Jonloon, which is the city. I don't think we mentioned that. There's like KCON is the country and then Jonloon is the city. But like that's how it feels sometimes, where it's like, oh, Jonloon is the center of the world. And then like as the series progresses, you kind of realize like, no, there's stuff happening outside of Jonloon that affects the events in KCON back home. So I think that's also kind of one of those things where as you're reading, you get the sense of like scale and scope that I love.
That's part of what makes Alex's favorite plot so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that character specifically really buys into that mindset, and there's some interesting stuff with that about like you said, like themes of identity, and like I was an immigrant to the United States, right? So like I'm not like, it wasn't as hard for me as other people might have been because I know English and everything, right? But like, there is this like certain level of othering that people do when they find out that, oh, you're not American, and they like find out like, oh, you're Canadian, like, and they start like treating you as like that Canadian person. They ask you questions about Canada, and then like every time they meet with you, they like, if you ever try to talk about like American politics or like American current events, they like kind of don't really take your opinion too seriously a lot of the time because they're like, oh, you're Canadian, you don't fully understand it, even if I like lived in America for a decade or however long, right? And there's another character in the story who very much buys into the whole like Keikon is the center of the world mentality, and eventually is able to go outside of Keikon and then interact with Kekanese immigrants. And it's really interesting to see how those immigrants like have their own identity separate from people in Keikon, like Kekanese internationals. It's really interesting seeing like how identity plays in with that, and like how do you define being Kekanese? Is there one like true way of being Kekanese, or are there different ways to be Kekanese? Do you have to be part of this Greenbone society? Do you have to be a gang member, you know? Or can you forego Jade entirely and live a Jadeless life, you know? And so it's like it's super interesting seeing all those different dynamics come into play with people's different identities and stuff. I think it's really well done.
Yeah.
Fonda Lee is an expert.
Oh yeah, Fonda Lee is incredible. We should all read her book Zero Boxer.
Oh yeah, there's a couple of them.
Oh yeah, I looked that up the other day.
It's free on Audible if you have Audible Premium.
She has 3 other books.
Oh really? I cannot read that.
Is Zero Boxer? There's like multiple of them, right?
Zero Boxer is a standalone. Is that mirrored? Is that backwards? There you go.
Oh, Zero Boxer is a standalone.
Oh no, I think I removed Clara. Hold on.
I can only see red. Oh, Clara's just gone. Booted.
No, Clara, welcome
hi.
back.
Clara, we've exiled you from the family.
Oh no. I'm gonna overthrow your whole society.
Oh no.
Okay. Before we leave the spoiler-free zone of this talk, do you guys want to leave the viewers with any final thoughts, like relating this series to like other series that like if you like this series, you'll like Greenbone?
Actually,
that always helps people, I think, decide whether or not something is for them.
I have 2 things to say. One, there was a Nat comment earlier, Nat S, where she said, "This series has been high up on my TBR for so long, but I think I want to read Realm of the Elderlings first." So I have a couple of things to say on this. The first is that Realm of the Elderlings is long; it's a commitment, but it's indigestible, bite-sized trilogies. But right now, there's only 2 books. There's going to be a 3rd book, but there's only 2 books, and they're relatively easy reads. Like they go down easy and they're fast. And so, honestly, if you're really interested in the Greenbone Saga, I would recommend jumping into Greenbone Saga and just finishing that before diving into like a much larger series, because I got through Greenbone Saga in like a week and a half, 2 weeks. Like I devoured it. It's like it really sucks you in, and like I know Nat is more on the sci-fi spectrum of science fiction fantasy novels, and so like if you don't traditionally read fantasy books, and they don't click with you as much as they do other people, I think that this book in particular, with its contemporary setting, would actually be more appealing. And another thing I want to say to what Rid said about like, is it like other series you've read? I would say that like in terms of books I've read, it's not really like anything else I've read too much. I'd say the closest, most popular analogy would be Mistborn Era 1. And if you like Mistborn Era 1, you'd probably like this. And also, I would like to say, more importantly than that, is if you don't like Mistborn Era 1, but you like specifically the criminal, like, crew dynamic of the Final Empire, Book 1 in particular, of, like, the characters interacting with each other, planning a heist, whatever, like Ocean's 11 style. It's not quite like that, but it is more of that kind of flavor, if that makes sense. It's not really like Mistborn, but like that flavor in Book 1 of Mistborn in particular. If you like that, you'd like it.
What Alex is saying is that regardless of if you like this one, you will like this book because
Mhm.
Fonda Lee is a
Yeah.
genius.
Yeah.
And I like we've talked about like how good her characters and stuff are, but she is like such a good writer, and these, in my opinion, are going to be like a classic book. And the
Mhm.
fact that
I
like we've
could
had
see
two
that
books,
happening.
we've had two books, and the last book is about to come out, and I couldn't tell you a single thing. I couldn't like I mean we could make predictions, but I couldn't
Mhm.
make
Yeah.
any guess for how it will end. And that I
Mhm.
think is like a sign of a master.
Oh yeah.
My selling point on this would be like, I don't think it's like anything I've ever read, but I think if you watch a lot of TV, this has like a very TV show. It's like built for TV, and I think,
Mhm.
and I don't mean that in a bad way at all. Like I just think like you could just adapt this straight off the page, pretty much, and it would work.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's very snappy, and entertaining and all that stuff. But like, there's a heart to the books that, like, we wouldn't be gushing about it if it was just fun and like a page turner like action book. Like it's got a lot of heart to it and a lot of pain when it comes to, like, Hilo reminds me of my brother, like in real life, and that kind of like, if you don't fit into, this is not a knock against my brother, but like if you don't fit into like my family thing, like we might butt heads a little bit because he's like family over everything, and I'm like less family oriented person. So like I relate to that, and I think everybody can find something here like that's just like my sister, or like that's like my daughter, or whatever. Like you can find someone that really connects you to the story and makes you invested, and then the characters are like some of the best you'll ever read.
Yeah. I think if you're a character reader, like you're gonna love Greenbone because it has some of the best characters, and then like combined with how good Fonda Lee is at plotting and like surprising the reader, and it just makes for such a fun read. And I highly recommend the audiobooks. I know Alex read the audiobooks as well, and they just make it go down so easy.
They're very good.
Yeah.
Shout out to the audiobook reader because they go into, because we talked about how it's on a global scale and there's a lot of different people from different nationalities. They go in on the accents. It is so good. Like you'll have a character like, he'll speak in like a normal American accent and
Normal.
He'll speak in an American accent most of the time. But then, like, when a character is actually speaking in Hispanian to another person, not in Kekanese, the narrator just does like, he like turns on like a British accent, and then like the character's just like talking differently now, and that's so interesting to me. It's like the way that's like conveyed, and like the different voices he does for everybody. He has a very good job. Like this is not something I can say about a lot of male audiobook readers. But he does a very good job, like doing feminine voices too, I feel, which is also a plus.
Yeah, his Hilo voice is so good, and I just think like as a performance, like his performance is good. He's really good at like injecting like emotion into certain. Like there was a scene in Jade War where I like got up and I had like chills because the way he said it was just fantastic. So I highly recommend the audiobooks. But
and like to that point on Hilo, like he has particular voices for every character that feel super distinct, and like without being like, this voice is just completely different. It's like a slight change to his voice that's like, I would never mistake Hilo for Lon or Hilo for Andon, or especially not Hilo for Shay or anybody else like that. It's like everybody has like such a particular way of talking. It's really awesome.
Definitely. Shout out, I think it's Andrew Kishino. Shout out to Andrew Kishino. But yeah, I think that about does it for our non-spoilery section. So if you have not read the books,
get out.
Take this opportunity to get out.
I think it's going to be us four talking.
You're being exiled.
Hold on, let me change the banner. How are you guys doing while I do that? How's your guys' day going?
Pretty good.
Great.
Okay, I changed
I have
it.
green tea.
Doing good.
Like, I mean, I woke up, I like took a shower, I ate a little bit, and then I had to get ready for this immediately. So
Thank you for joining me today.
No
And yeah,
problem.
thanks to everyone who was watching earlier. You probably already left, but
Thanks for having us.
yeah. Okay, now that we can talk about spoilers, this is your last warning, by the way. If you're still here and you haven't read Jade War, we're gonna be talking about like everything that happens. What are you most excited about in Jade Legacy, the last book that's coming out soon?
So Fonda Lee has spoiled this for us. She made a tweet on her Twitter with presumably her cell phone, spoiling her book before it came out by saying, "Oh, the Greenbone Saga takes place over 30 years." To give you an idea, if you haven't read the books and you're still here because you just don't care, let me just put this into perspective for you. The first two books take place over 5 years. So that's like 25 more years for the last book. That's crazy. That's so nuts. I'm like, I don't know what to expect. There's like I had ideologies. I had ideas of like where I thought like certain characters were gonna go, like Andon or Barrow, who we haven't talked about yet, but I'm sure Clara will talk about Barrow in just a second. That I'm like, oh yeah, this is clearly setting up for something to happen with this character. But now that I know that it's going to go like 25 years in the future and likely probably focus on Nico and Rue and those characters too, and makes me question like, what are these characters going to be doing? Like, is Barrow going to be doing something now, or is he going to be simmering for 25 years? You know what I mean? Like, what is there going to be a hard time skip, or is it going to be more gradual over 25 years in the next book? Like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really changes everything. And like you said, it makes it so hard to predict what's going to happen in a really good way. Because I think in Jade War, Fonda Lee sets up that expectation of like, yeah, we can skip swaths of time, like months. And I think that's really interesting for like character development. And I had predictions, and now I have no idea how it's going to go down.
I have a prediction. If we're doing
Chase.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not what I want to see. It's what I think we're going to see. I think Hilo is going to actually be the big bad of the series, in a way.
Oh.
And I think that Shay and Andon and maybe even 8 Mata, although I think 8 and Hilo might take each other out, maybe. I don't know. But I think that like Shay and Andon are the future. Thinking wise, but even Shay is still kind of in that Greenbone like way of thinking, whereas Andon is kind of more on the outside.
Shay could go either way.
It could go either way, yeah. But I think that Andon for sure. But I think Hilo. The thing was, I reread the duel scene earlier today, and Hilo, walks up to Shay before it starts, and he's like, basically like, if you die, I'm breaking the peace, and I'm just gonna murder everyone. Good luck. And he just walks off. And Shay, like, that's what makes that duel so great, because Shay is like, I have to win, or I have to not die. They're not this, but I cannot die, because if I die, he's gonna murder everyone. And like,
I love Hilo because he's just like such a wild card. Like him being in this series, like you don't know what he's gonna do. Like he could totally just like break these rules. What's it called? Aisho. Like he could totally just break Aisho and like do whatever he wants. And it's so interesting because he is so like, he's kind of like the biggest reason that like Andon like has this whole identity crisis, and he's like so he adheres to the society like so to like a toxic degree, but at the same time he also just like disregards it when it serves him. And it's like he's such a wild card character. I love him.
If you're gonna change, he's got to go.
And so I have a prediction, but also like going off that, like Hilo, like he's just obsessed. He is obsessed with the family being together and being the way he wants it to be. And so anytime anyone goes against it, whether it's Shay when she leaves, and when he says he doesn't want to be a Greenbone, his dad when he doesn't support like Lon, like he just rejects these people. Like with Anon, he's like, I never want to see you again. Don't talk to me. And he refuses to even acknowledge his existence. He refuses to acknowledge Shay's existence. She says he didn't like talk to her at all. Like he just ignored her entirely. And it's like he's just like he's like his obsession is extremely unhealthy. And like he will burn the world down before anything gets in the way of the way his family wants to be, like killing someone, because he's like, Lon's kid has to be a part of the family, and so he just kills Nico's parents without like no remorse. He's just like, nope, this is just what has to be done. And it's so interesting that it's like there's not this moral dilemma where after he's like, oh, what did I do? He's like, nope, this is the way it has to be. He has to be a part of the family. This is it. You know, and it's so like my prediction.
Because, no, go ahead. Give your prediction first.
My prediction is that Hilo is gonna die 9,000% chance. To me, if there's any character who's gonna die, it's Hilo, absolutely bar none. And I think how is going to be the weird part. But if it does go into the future and Nico is an adult, I'm wondering if Nico is eventually going to be the one to do it.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
When he finds out that he killed his mom.
Like, poetic. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's going to find out.
That would be crazy.
Yeah.
Betrayed by his own family is his undoing, you know.
Like stabbed in the back.
Yeah.
Or, no. Okay.
No, it won't be a stabbed in the back.
No.
It'll be like, because it's going to be, we're going to see the kids when they're like 25.
Stab in
and
the face.
Like, not stab in the face,
like,
it's going to be like, they realize that Hilo is like a threat to the clan. He's like, you know what,
they're gonna be like, Hilo, come to this dinner party, and then there's like 50 Greenbones in there, and then they all like attack him. It's like
I will
just
say,
to be a devil's advocate, I don't think that Hilo is going to die. I think that Hilo is going to be like I think that Hilo is going to become Carl Sennington. Like that to me just feels like the most obvious thing, because I feel like Hilo hated his grandfather, and he's going to become his grandfather, and he's going to be that like old, like just bitter grandfather. And I don't think Nico will kill him, but I do think that he'll confront him about it, but I don't think he'll kill him. He'll just like, I don't know, he's just gonna like die like this bitter old man that like refused to give up his worldview.
That would be really sad, but totally appropriate.
Rid, you and I said the same thing, because I put that in chat too. That I think he's gonna.
Oh, you did? I swear I didn't read it.
No.
I haven't been looking at the chat.
We were hive minding.
Something I would say to Hilo dying, what I think is in favor of Hilo dying, is the way this story is set up and carried out is very similar, not to other fantasy stories, but specifically to Greek tragedies, and like that kind of like, oh, your family ends up betraying you, and it's gonna have like a sad ending, kind of, that like leaves you with some sort of message, you know. And even if Hilo doesn't die, I still don't think this series will have any kind of triumphant happy ending. I think this series will end in tragedy. Like the world might be in a better place than it was,
but for our characters.
But how it gets there will be tragic. The family story, I think, will ultimately be tragic. It is tragic up until this point, and I don't think that it'll necessarily be redeemed in that sense. If Hilo doesn't die, Hilo could kill a member of his family. Like I have a feeling some big tragic thing is going to happen at the end of the story within the family that's going to leave us
Page 5.
But something I want to stress is I definitely think that this is a story in which, even if there are characters that make changes for the better within this world, there's not really any heroes, because everything, the way that change comes about and like the way everything happens is like through killing characters we like, or doing terrible things to other people, or like lying to people, murdering people, betraying people, backstabbing people. We're gonna get to Clara's Barrow theory, I guess, in a second here. But I could talk more about it later. But even if characters incite good change, I think they're going to do so through tragic and like maybe morally reprehensible means, you know?
Oh.
Yeah, I was just saying
Yeah.
Prince theory because I think it piggybacks off what you're saying right now.
Yeah,
Whereas
it does.
I think it's
Okay, Clara,
Can I-
the stage is
can-
yours.
I'm gonna get chased off the internet, but okay, let's talk about Barrow. And when I say I like Barrow, I don't mean that I like him more than anyone else, and I don't mean that like I'm justifying his actions or saying he's a good person, because everyone in these books is kind of a bad person. But
Yeah.
I will say, like when we were reading this in Discord, I made some parallels between like Barrow and like other fantasy protagonists, and I was thinking that like when this book starts, when Jade City starts, it's like the scrappy street kid like trying to steal some jade for himself and make a name for himself, and that is your classic like protagonist origin story. That's like, you know, like kid screwed over by the establishment, family tragically killed, trying to get magic, struggling with, you know, something that's equivalent to a drug addiction, is something that in another series Barrow would be our protagonist, and Fonda Lee has simply chosen to tell the story from the Call's point of view primarily. And that's such an interesting choice, I think. And you know, like when Barrow gets his little epilogue moment, like break the chains, overthrow the establishment, start the revolution, like we need that, right? Because the reason that the Call family is in such trouble is because their society is like massively problematic. And like to go back to what Alex was saying about, you know, this end is going to be tragic, you know, for our main characters, it is about the legacy of the characters. And if any of the Calls are going to have a happy ending, or if any of the Calls' like future children are going to have a happy life, then Barrow kind of needs to succeed, right? Like, or work together with them, right? Because if Barrow doesn't succeed at causing change, then there will be no, you know, and that's the thing, is that like Fonda Lee is doing this so brilliantly, it could absolutely be everyone fails, like tragedy all around, no happy ending. But if, you know, we are attached to these characters despite them all being, you know, largely terrible, if we want any of them to have a happy ending, you know, Barrow has to be part of that.
Yeah, I definitely see that. Because, I mean, if they do end up having a happy ending, like, if Hilo succeeds in, like, completely stamping out the Mountain Clan, like, that's kind of awful. Like, that means that, like, like, that's awful. Just, like, from an objective point of view, like, you know, like, that's not good for, like, KCON as a whole. But, like, that's, like, what his end game is. So yeah, I love your Barrow theory. I think it's it's very valid, and I think Barrow is a super interesting character. And I think it was Alex who said earlier that you think that Hilo is going to be the big bad of the series, and I thought that. Oh, Chase, sorry, Chase said that earlier, and yeah, like I used to think that Barrow was going to be the big bad of the series, but there's really no big bad. Like everyone is just
the big bad is society.
Basically.
Like Ait is a villain, kind of.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
I mean,
I
not
wouldn't.
even.
I'd say she's more of an antagonist, and like the difference between that being that like
there
she's
are
just
no
opposed to our main characters, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a great revelation at the end of Jade City, when like the mountain's been this like ghost for the whole book, and you think that like Aitmata is going to be like the devil or something, and no, she's just a person from another clan.
There's a line in the duel between Shay and Ait where she's like, she cuts Ait's ear off, or like halfway off, and she's like shocked, like they both just pause for a second in the middle of the fight, and Shay's like, she didn't realize that Ait was a person who could bleed. Like she thought that she was just like force of nature, like God. And like in two ways that's kind of like that's exactly what you're talking about. But I also was wondering, rereading it, I was like, is that foreshadowing? Because there are a lot of conversations later between Shay and Ait about potentially working together. And that's where I'm thinking, like, if Hilo goes full like Coulson, like puppet master from the background, like he evolves as a character to like, I don't need to be in the streets like shanking people, like I can just run this war from the back, and he's doing like way more damage that way because he's influencing like the makes to like do all this shit. Well, if that happens, and then Shay, could she work with Ait because I has a lot of points.
Yeah.
And,
There's like a part where I is like
Yeah.
literally supporting like refugees, and
Yeah.
the calls are
Right.
like, we hate
We're going-
refugees, we don't want them.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
like, wait.
Yeah, but also I does things where she's like, we need to keep Jade in Keycon, but then she also like manufactures shine in another
Yeah.
country. So she kind of she doesn't care about like the means to get something, it's only about the end. So if like she has to control shine to beat the no peak to put mountain in control so that she can protect Keycon, like it's really twisted.
But it's not
Yeah,
just
and
that.
then Hilo, and then
I just want to say to that point real quick that she does give a really good argument of like Shine and Jade are going to get out of KCON whether we like it or not.
Mhm.
So we should control the distribution of Shine. So we get to control who gets Jade, right? And I think that is an important point, playing into your thing about how you're saying she has like a lot of good points, and I think that is a good point, you know.
Mhm.
But yeah, what
yeah,
did you say, Claire?
Ibi says if Hilo destroys the mountain, that's the exact same thing as Ite destroying No Peak. And yeah, that's
Exactly.
You know, it could be that it ends with one clan gone, either clan, or like both clans gone, and you know.
Can we go full tinfoil hat?
Yeah, what's up?
Go ahead.
So Clara has talked about like
the
gods and stuff.
Yeah.
And like
Oh, sure.
But like we can get to that one. But I think I told Clara when she finished, I was like, all right, imagine this where like the Jade Legacy thing is like the Aspenians come over with their like super soldiers that they've created using Shine and Jade and like attack Keycon to like try to take over the actual Jade resource. And then they have to arm like their general populace of Keycon with Jade and finally like distribute it and give them Shine so they can use it. And it's like Hilo like taking one of his like collar studs and giving it to like a little kid in the street and being like, be strong. And then they're just like go and like help fight the resistance or the Aspenians and they all unite together.
It's like the scene in Lord of the Rings where an Aragorn gives that kid the sword.
Yeah, he's like, this is a good sword. It's like a really terrible sword.
Yeah. Wait, can I talk about the god stuff though for a
Oh
minute?
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So like I was going like very like tinfoil hat with this, and Chase like kind of talked me back from the edge, but like the thing like I was saying earlier about like magic being like sort of equivalent to like business or science in this world. Like I would be totally content if that was not explored further at all, and Fonda Lee was just like, yeah, that's the world. They have Jade, that's magic. But I also feel like based on the way she writes such surprising scenes, I would not at all be surprised if she pulled like a massive like plot twist in the last book and legitimized all the gods and all the origin theories, because that's something that's been like on the back burner the whole time. And this kind of was something I saw Ibi say in chat a while ago about like seeing other countries, is that in Jade War, the interludes were, a number of the interludes have been Jade origin stories from other cultures. And like what's really interesting is that like the Kegonese people think they have Jade by divine right. And like on one hand, you'd be like that seems totally legit because they actually do have magic powers. But then you have in the last book, or not the last book, in Jade War, Aitmata is like, I'm an atheist, right? And we see that obviously like the Aspenian soldiers can use Jade even though they don't believe in the gods. And there have been a lot of little conversations in the last book where like when Hilo went to Aspenia and they had to like make a vow according to the Aspenian customs, and Hilo was like, they know we don't believe that shit, right? Like I feel like they've raised a lot of questions and questioned the nature of faith enough times that I would totally not be surprised.
And like you said too, at every major event, the monks are there, which that's fine, that's part of the culture. But just saying, like she could totally have that be like the gun that's been on the wall, you know?
Yeah.
Here's
my Chekhov's plot twist though, is that like we're talking about the gods and the interludes. Me and Chase were having a lot of conversations when we read about the interludes being history repeating. Because one of them was like about one of the interludes was like someone left Keycon, and that had a lot of parallels to Andon and Shay. And there was another one about a clan leader who was supported by his wife, and that's Hilo and Wen. and one of the interludes ancient stories is like a foreign force is invading Kikon, and the clan leader's wife and the clan leader is killed by the invading force, and then the clan leader's wife is like about to die, and the clan leader gets one last chance from the gods, and they bring his spirit back to save everyone. And like we've been foreshadowing like an Isthenian invasion of Kikon the whole time, and we've got a clan leader, and I would not be surprised at all if Fonda Lee did that plot and like brought Hilo's spirit back in like a massive twist, legitimizing like the gods.
Do you mean Lawn Spirit?
No, Hilo. Like she thinks Hilo's gonna die.
Because in this,
Hilo dies. Oh, got you.
In the interludes, right? The clan leader and his wife. It could be Lon.
Got you.
I have a crackpot theory about Lon.
I have a crackpot theory about Lon too. So what's yours, Rid?
Okay, so I think that how like when Lon dies, it's like the one who returns. I don't think this is actually gonna happen, but I feel like it fits, so it might happen. Yeah. But I think that Lon is going to come back, and I think he's gonna marry Aitmata, and I think they're gonna make like one mountain society.
Whoa!
Going off that exact same thing, I have a theory about that stuff too, like the one who returned and all that stuff. Specifically, that as like a more like metaphorical like manifestation of it, of like something that gets brought up a lot, is that Nico is the spitting image of his father. And so I think that it might be like part of like Jade Legacy is that Nico, as he grows up, he takes up his father's legacy of like being less toxic, because Lana's like he's not buying into like the society as much as Hilo is, right? And he kind of becomes like a second coming, quote unquote, of Lon. Like he's like a return of Lon and his legacy, like inheriting Lon's will. Lon is
that actually makes more sense
because I refuse to accept that he died in the first place.
I'm just telling you, I feel like Lon and Aitmata, like that's such a good ship. Like they would, if they had just gotten married, like none of this would have happened.
That's true.
Hear me out for Shay and Aitmata. They keep having these conversations.
That's true.
Like, I mean, that relationship might be kind of shot now that Shay cut off her ear and then Aitmata, like cut her stomach open.
I think there's some respect.
Never say never. Enemies to lovers.
I mean,
too.
Exactly.
I like what Ivy put in the chat. It said, I see Hilo ending up as bitter old man, kind of like holding on to his feud against the mountains, similar to how Coulson was obsessed with his glory days. What if they literally, like, in Jade Legacy, this current conflict is, like, done? That would be crazy, because that would be like, what if Hilo's just talking about, oh, yeah, that time that I killed Gaunt Ash, me and Andon, and everyone's like, yeah, shut up, Grandpa. And, like, it's not even happening anymore. I mean, I would actually kind of like that if, like, they just move past it, and then we do get the Espinian invasion, and it's kind of like they're working together. I think
I do think when the series is over, my prediction is that there will not be clans anymore at all. There will be no more Greenbone clans.
Wait, it'll be the one mountain clan, right?
No, not even.
Or like no
clan at all.
No mountain.
Like,
no clan.
No clan.
Do you guys think there will still be like green bones? Like, do you still think there will be like jade?
So that's something I was thinking about. Is that like, I think it does, like with the nature of the rebellion and all of this, it does have to address, right, that they've established jade and green bones to be a thing of divine right, and that's like kind of iffy because they've made it like a bloodlines thing, which is like a little racist. And they like, especially with how they treat Andon, and so I feel like they have to address the question of who gets jade. And like I almost see it as like at the end there's like two options, like everyone has jade or no one has jade.
Are they gonna pull a Hero of Ages to bring back Mistborn? Oh, Rid hasn't read that book.
I think
But I mean, I could see it being like, in the end, you know, they like, if she brings in the gods, somehow like it being so that everyone has Jade, or like
Shine.
Jade is destroyed.
where you use shine to give it to everyone.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because one of
remember
the
when Shay like visits the mines? Like, what if they like
Mhm.
blow up the mines?
yeah
and
one thing
there's
I
just, like,
talked
no
to
Jade
Chase
left?
about that I like just said offhand and I haven't really thought about it much is that like, have we addressed if Jade is like a finite resource?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is finite. They
Because
just
they
have a
talk about
lot of it.
It must
production
be.
going down and stuff, like,
Yeah.
because they're
Yeah.
having to find new mines. I think what's interesting is like, if you look at like our own world, like anytime there's something new that people hoard and then they become wealthy off of it and they like restrict other people's use of it,
Mhm.
it's like eventually through change, like we're seeing in these books, like
Yeah.
everyone does eventually get it. So like the first time cars were around, like not everybody just had a car. You had to be extremely wealthy, you know, but like I think now everybody has a car. So I think eventually they'll find a way to like everyone will have it, but you'll still
just thought
have
of
people like
something.
you'll still have the 1%ers who have like
Yeah.
a collar, a
So
choker.
not
of
to
Jade
do
versus,
my
like, that you're saying.
tinfoil hat again, but like if we're talking about like repeating history, one of the interludes was like the gods built the humans like a massive jade palace, and then when they realized humans sucked, they destroyed the palace.
Oh,
And that was
yeah.
that's the K kind of Jade origin story. Is that's why the
These are
Jade
my
is all
favorite
buried.
Clara theories, actually.
There's another.
Yeah.
There's another interlude that talks about how the jade is actually the skeleton of like a dead god or something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It could be.
I had this theory that, so you know how Andon, like, he's at the end of Jade War, he says that he's going to medical school. I said that he was gonna like cure the itches. I think that he's going to create a synthetic Jade. Like, and then that would be like kind of like everyone getting Jade. If there
Yeah.
if he was able to create a synthetic version that like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that doesn't cause itches, or like, you know, that you don't have to be like genetically resistant to, like, I think that would also be like a like leveling the playing field. But I definitely think that his like medical school thing is going to come into play, where he's like doing research
Mm-hmm.
and he like creates some sort of like synthetic, or like maybe he creates like a form of shine that like isn't addictive or something.
Like like a proper medication that you can take.
Here's my thing though. Like, I absolutely don't disagree with any of these theories that like everyone will have Jade. I think that's too positive.
I agree with you.
She won't let
I
us
said
have
this earlier.
You think what?
I think it's too positive. We've all read these books by
Oh.
Fonda Lee. We're not gonna have the ideal Jade for everyone.
I said this earlier, but like, yeah, I really, really do not think Jade Legacy is going to have a happy ending in any sense of the word. Like, it might have like, oh, the world might be in a better off place, but all of our characters, or at least most of the main characters we've been following up until this point, will not be. I don't think Hilo, if Hilo doesn't die, I still don't think he'll be in a better place than he's in now. You know,
Hilo is gonna suffer.
Hilo will have a downfall of some sort. He's gonna, because that's the thing. He's done so many things that like, it's the kind of trope of like, oh, you've committed this sin and now you have like retribution coming for it. You know, specifically the Nico thing. That's going to come back around 100%. And like Hilo is, there's going to be problems.
Well, something we haven't talked about like explicitly yet is how much the sense of the family is important in here is from traditional Asian cultures of like worshiping your family. And it would be if we're dismantling all of the society already, it would be so poetic for his downfall to be at the hands of his children.
Yeah.
I think from like you know, like an Asian family background, that would be like the ultimate, you know, betrayal.
And he's so obsessed with it too, right? So it's just like it's very natural progression of his arc within the story for that to happen.
I just want to say I have a visceral reaction every time I see a Maddie in any chat, because I just saw Maddie and I was like, "Is that Madeline? Maddie?"
No. Can we reference Wheel of Time?
Yeah, I think. Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about? I think we've gone for like an hour so far. So
books. They're very good.
They're
Are
good.
you guys
They're
rereading
all
or
right.
anything before Jade Legacy? What's y'all's plan?
Well, I
I
just read them, so
I read them
I
pretty
don't.
recently.
I read them like a year ago. I might read Jade War.
If you do reread Jade War, I would recommend checking out the audiobook if you want, just because I really do think the performance of the narrator really does add something. I think there's something valuable to his performance. He's really, really good.
I think I'll do that just
mhm.
also because I can do it while I work. So.
Maybe I'll
Yeah,
reread
also that.
the interludes to support my conspiracy theorizing.
So what is it, November 30th? Are we 17 days away?
Yeah.
Is it the 30th?
I think it's 30th or 31st.
30th is when it comes
No, it's
out.
30th.
I'm
There's
really
no
hoping-
November 31st.
Well,
I'm
there
really
you
hoping
go.
that like the books ship quickly and all that.
Yeah. I think
I'm
when I
gonna
did
do
War,
audiobook
it
again.
came on the day. So I think they shipped it to arrive
Yeah.
on the day.
Okay.
So hopefully that's the same. So yeah, just Watt and 5 animated Watt shorts, and then also
And
Jade.
And also just
Greenbone
see,
and-
also Cytonic we have coming
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
There's like
Yeah.
I was like, someone asked me if there was like any like media coming up that I was looking forward to, and I was like, so much.
Yeah.
I need to
So
take
much
like the
stuff
rest of the
happening.
year off work.
Yeah, honestly.
Seriously.
And it's gonna be Wheel of Time every freaking week.
Oh my
Like,
God.
it's hard. I always forget about that because it's like, oh, next Friday we're getting 3 Wheel of Time episodes and all those Wheel of Time shorts, and then it's like, oh, that's a lot to get through. You know, I'm gonna have this big release, and then after that I have Jade Legacy, and there's nothing in between. Then
We're
I'm like,
gonna
wait a
be
second, there's
an
Wheel of
emotional
Time
mess.
in between every week,
Every
you
week,
know,
yeah.
for the next 5 weeks. You know, so I'm
And
just
don't
like,
act like we're not gonna be rewatching them all multiple times. So
Yeah.
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 I'm excited for that. You guys should come
Yeah.
back for like Wheel of Time sessions.
I'd
I'm
love to.
excited.
Thank you for having me.
That would
We
be
should
fun,
do.
yeah.
We could do.
Oh,
we
yeah.
could do a post Jade Legacy
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah,
series
we should.
discussion.
Oh yeah, we should, shouldn't we?
Look at the brain on Clara.
And then we can talk about how all our theories were wrong.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
I know.
and Fonda Lee just like completely
look-
blew up our entire.
I'm gonna look like such a clown.
When we-
No.
I
when
know it already.
Jade Legacy ends extremely happily, and like everyone is like just friends, and we're just like, oh.
Yeah, I'd
When,
like to just
when
point
Lon
out.
comes back and he marries Ike Mata, then you will realize.
I'd like to just point to the beginning of this stream where we explicitly stated that the way these books are written, it's literally impossible to tell what's coming next. You don't know. And then we try to theorize what comes next.
I just can't wait for when she's like Lon, who just came back from the dead, and then she puts in parentheses, who looks just like Daniel Henney, and then like closes it off. And keeps going.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's gonna be my
It's
favorite part of
definitely
Jade
going to
Legacy.
happen.
There's actually one more thing I do want to talk about in Jade War. I want to talk about more in depth Andon's arc in Hispania, and specifically about I talked a little bit about it in the non-spoiler section, but specifically about like the Hispanian Kikanese community and like the community center they have there, and like their version of being Kikanese is like honestly much less toxic than the version of K-Con that Andon came from, and it's like it's so interesting because he is so vehemently against being Hispanian, but then he goes there and he finds that there's a way to be Hispanian and Kikanese at the same time, and it's not either one of those things. It's like true intersectionality, you know. It's not being Hispanian and Kikanese. It's being Keko-Hispanian, right? It's being that specifically is different from those other two things, you know. And like how Fonda Lee like just shows that, like, so she does like such a good job, and like it's so good for Andon's arc of like coming to terms with himself, you know, and like not having all these toxic perceptions around his identity. I found his arc to be he like I said, Hilo was my favorite character earlier, but honestly, I like Andon just as much. Like Andon's arc is so good. I just love it so much. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really special because I don't think you've probably ever seen anything like that in any, almost, well, I'm sure in TV and stuff, but like not in any book or fantasy book where like she took the time to like, what would that culture look like? That's this cross section. And yeah, it feels very authentic, even though I don't have that background, but like for me, I was like, wow, this is She put a lot of work into that. And
I do. I mean,
it's really interesting.
if I'm like half Chinese, then I'm basically Andon in this scenario. And like, I mean, it really does feel like, you know, like reminiscent of Chinatown and, you know, like my grandparents who were immigrants and that sort of thing. I do think there's like, I mean, I like that it's a lens for Andon to like look through on his own identity, but I don't really know that. I mean, I don't think I would say that it's like he's totally free of like toxicity there at all. Because I mean, the whole way that it's like the community center is, it's like a milder form of Kikon, but they are doing their best to like maintain the old ways, which is in itself like the thing that that we're trying to get rid of. But yeah, it definitely does feel like a really nice depiction of a diaspora.
Yeah, and it's very muted to where like they only have like one pillar who's not even really the pillar and one horn who's not really the horn. And it's like, but they're kind of controlling this whole area, and it's, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like they're not the pillar and they're not the horn, but they are really doing. They're doing. I mean, honestly, they're doing exactly the same thing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
They're
And,
not
like,
talking about it.
It's more like informal and like just less controlling, I feel like.
And even if the society is less toxic, if not completely absent of toxicity, Andon in the end still chooses duty to his family over the society, and he goes through trying to kill what's his name?
The rodent,
You know what I'm talking
whatever, the rat. What is he called?
Oh,
Yeah.
Tiga. Wait, no.
From Egoton.
No, not Tiga.
the place is called Egoton. I don't remember his name, but like
Tiga Swiga. Yeah. That's what he's called.
I can't remember.
He still chooses to go through with this plan, and it leads to someone dying. And like he eventually decides, like, I am going to be a Greenbone. Sapunya. Yeah.
Wait, there's someone called Iga Tiga or something.
I think you know what you're. I think I know what you're talking about.
Their China analog is Igutan.
Yeah, Tiga Swiga.
No, Tiga Swiga is a thing, I think, or something like that. I know what you're talking about.
Y'all are just making
you guys talking about?
No. Okay, so we listened to the audiobook, so they might be like spelled differently. But I swear to God, there's like I know what Rid's talking about. There's like a point in the books where they like say like they're talking about something, and it's called like Tiga Swiga. Maybe it's like a town they go to or something. I don't know.
No, I think it's a person. I thought it was like the smuggler Tiga Swiga.
No.
Sapunyo, the smuggler.
Sapunyo.
There's nothing more funny than when Rid was posting her thoughts and like extremely.
Is Tiga Swiga the city he's from?
No, it's a person. I swear to God, I think it's a person.
Are you sure?
I thought he was from like an island nation off the coast of
Because I know, maybe someone in the chat saying something. We're just like they're going nuts.
Uwiwa. It's the Uwiwa Islands.
Uwiwa Islands.
It's a city. Okay.
No,
Paul, or it's not the islands.
I don't know what it's.
It's the. Wait, it is the islands.
Uwiwa Islands.
This is the best part of this stream so far.
Oh wait, Paul is saying that Tiga Swiga is Sapunyo's city.
I have no idea what you're saying.
I think Paul's just making stuff up too.
No,
there's something called Tiga Swiga.
Yeah, we're not crazy. Fonda Lee knows, okay?
Yeah, where's Fonda Lee at?
It would be in Jade War.
Origas Golf or Taco?
No, it's Tiga Swiga.
It's Tiga Swiga. I swear to God. Unless the audiobook narrator is pronouncing it wrong.
Yeah, I was about to say, because like the only people who are saying this are you two. Me and Clara.
I have no idea.
Swear to God.
I don't know how it would be spelled, because like I thought that like
Tia
Luhia.
How do you say that?
No.
Wait.
Are we just going
wait, hold on.
Paul said he
I'm gonna look up Tiga.
We're all looking it up.
How would you
pronounce that?
It's not gonna come up. There's like a word scramble. Unscramble letters Swiga.
Yeah. Maybe we're crazy, but I know what you're talking about. Right?
Tia Luhia is the largest of the Uwiwa Islands, which is where Sapunyo the smuggler is from.
Okay, maybe I just heard it wrong. I don't
thought
know.
he said that too. Yeah. There's sometimes in audiobooks where I hear them say something over and over again, and I'm like hearing them wrong every time.
It's
Yeah.
Sepunyo's. Paul says it's Sepunyo's estate. Does his house have a name?
Okay.
Oh, that
Okay,
Tiga
well-
Swiga is his like house's name.
Oh, it's
No
like
idea what you're
Chateau
saying.
Marmont. Tiga Swiga.
Oh,
I don't know how it's spelled. I don't know. I'm gonna have to listen to the audiobook later and like try to find it.
God.
But yeah, I think we can end the stream on that note. Thank you all for joining me for this incredible live stream. Thank you all to the chat and for following along. And yeah, I hope we can do this again. This was really fun.
Yeah, this was
great.
super
And
fun.
yeah. All right. Definitely check out everyone in the description. Their Twitters are there. Go follow them. And yeah, thanks so much. Bye, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Bye, everyone.